stuff. And, you know, I want to share with you a little bit about what you're going to learn today. You're going to learn about the future of your children's children's children. What kind of world are we going to leave the third generation? And we're going to talk about that today. And horse training, Tegan's going to do it. And it's going to be about a challenge to be better each week. Some of us need that same challenge to be a little better each week. But we're going to do that. And I have got, I've had breakfast and 2 donuts. When we get to the end, I'm going to give you the most important religious freedom information we've had in 51 years. So stick around for that. But how many of you know what the rope's for? Yeah, every time someone gets baptized at Cowboy-Up, if the ones will come from last week, these are all ear tags of people that have been baptized here. They've got their name and their date. And yeah, we got a lot of people here. And we've got 2 out of 3 that got baptized last week. So you tie your little knot in the rope. This is Wiley and Alan. And each of them's got a little goodie bag. My great assistant to make sure I give the right bag to the right person.
Got it.
We're going to have to get a bigger rope.
Yep. Running out of knots.
Good job. Now, Alan, if you'll tie one, there's your goodie bag. Now, the ear tag has got to go back to Debbie unless you're going to wear it. There you go. It's just a cute reminder. Thank you, and we'll give that to Miss Debbie. How about a hand for them getting baptized last week? Yeah, thank you, guys. Thank you. Good to have you. All right, we got some people going to take these down so it won't block your view. Tegan, give us a little story. Part of the situation, I'm having a total joint replacement in my shoulder on the 17th, and there's going to be other people doing the training, so you're kind of getting a dose of who they're going to be. Tegan and Mike's going to be stepping in several times, and we're going to have some outside trainers also. But am I right? Are you working with this horse with the owner each week?
Yes. Well, I haven't worked with the owner, just the horse.
Okay, with the horse. And yeah. All right, good job, guys. Thank you. So give us a little bit about where you've been and where you're going. And I like the idea of when you got a nice-minded horse, each week you see changes. Mm-hmm. Do you see changes for getting better in your life every week? Yeah, I'm going to tell you right now. I was wrong. Of course, I'm wrong quite a bit. But I thought as you got older, you would have more patience. I found out that's not true, but it should be, because patience is a fruit of the Spirit, not a fruit of the Christian, and as we grow in Christ, we should be more patient. You know, if we expect a horse to get better each week, we should expect ourselves to get better each week. You know, I'm amazed at how people, I think you ought to change, but I don't want to. Do you have anybody in your life that you want them to make some changes? They probably do too. Have somebody in their life that they want to change. But go ahead and kind of tell us where you've been and where you're going and what we're going to do today.
So with her, we've just kind of started with the basics and seeing what she does and doesn't know. She's learned to lunge, to yield her hips to body pressure. We are working on yielding hips to physical touch pressure. Still working on those types of pressures. She's pretty good about yielding to body pressure, but we're still working on the physical touch. We've had a surcingle on. We've done some long lining. I've tied some noodles to the surcingle, a plastic bag. We started with a small lightweight saddle this week, not because I don't think she can take something bigger. It's what I own. And we've done a little bit of work dragging a tarp this week just to see how she responds.
Let me tell you, when that goes bad, it goes real bad. Unless you've got the rope where you can turn it loose.
Yes.
I hope.
Yes.
And you don't tie it to your saddle horn. Just let me tell you that, people. Don't ask me how I know. Because if you tie it, they cannot outrun it. And they will run from it sometimes. But that's good. You know, one of the things that she's teaching that I'm big on, a lot of people really like liberty work, and what that means is your horse is turned loose and it's all sign language, cues, energy. But then, you know, you can do like this and Tegan would move, but then if I do like this, they get mad. Yeah, it's a horse's natural instinct to push against pressure. So everything that we teach on the ground, they should learn both ways, and that's one of the things I really like about your training. You know, you can either point and get them to move their head, or you can take one finger and get them to move their head. That's what we're looking for, that soft feel, because we're trying to get this horse to where when you ride and you put a leg back, they know how to move their hips.
Exactly.
So it's good. Give us some, let's see. Show us what you're doing.
All right, so
I'll get out of your way.
some of this, and like I said, she's still a little sticky on this. So here, when I ask her to move her shoulders over, she's still wanting to move her butt a little towards me, which is not what I want. I want her to kind of sit on her butt a little and move her front feet across where the near front foot goes in front of the off front foot. So what I'm looking for is that step right there. So when she gives that to me, I'm going to release. Like I said, we haven't worked on that a ton yet. My big goal with her, because she is so good-minded, was let's just get some tack on her. Because I can skip some of the foundational steps, let's get some tack on her and then go back and work on the foundational steps while she's wearing the tack. You can't do that with every horse. Some horses you'd get in a lot of trouble skipping those foundations before you throw tack on them. So what I'll do with her today is I'll just kind of move her feet around, see where she is emotionally before I throw the saddle on. She's only had it on twice. And while she was perfect, I still want to give her the option of letting me know maybe she's having a bad day before I throw some tack on her. And so here I'm just looking for her to just keep a nice steady trot. Don't make me beg for it. And then when I ask her to, just face up. And so right there, that's what we're talking about with the emotional pressure. All I did was look at her hip, and she knows that means move the hip away from me and face me. Here I want her to move her shoulders away, go on the circle, which she did nicely. I'm going to ask her up to a trot. She came in a little close, so I'm going to say back up for me. And she does have a bug on her nose, so I'm going to let her get that. I'd want to smack the bug too if it were on me. And so again, because she's so good-minded, I don't do a whole lot of that before I throw the saddle on, just because, again, she's going to be a riding horse. She needs to get used to the saddle. So we'll get the saddle on and then start playing with other stuff. And I make sure that I'm not secretive. I'm not gentle with this saddle pad. It's not hurting her, but she needs to know this thing can be thrown on her from every which direction, and it's not going to hurt her, because this little saddle's easy to pick up, but when you have a big roping saddle, it's not going to be pretty when you come flinging it at her. So there, she misunderstood that she thought she was supposed to follow me. I'm going to say, no, get back where I wanted you, where I left you. That was just miscommunication. She didn't understand. And again, same thing with this saddle. It's light. Another reason I like it, I can lift this one with one arm.
How many times have you saddled her now?
This will be number 3.
Okay.
So not a lot. And I will say, excuse my setup. Those of you who know what you're looking for know that this is a very rigged setup. What I mean by that is this is not a saddle that's designed to have a back cinch, but since she's going to be a roping horse, she needs to know what a back cinch is and get used to it. So I have this rigged for a back cinch. Now, some of the expectations you need from your horse before you ever go to putting a saddle on, they need to be able to stand still. How can I get this cinched up if she's not going to stand still for me? That's not a good thing. So she needs to be able to stand completely still and patient while I do all this stuff before I ever even ask her to take this saddle.
Okay, a couple of points I'd like to make while we're doing this. You know, if you've got horses that have not been saddled very much, is when you reach underneath their belly, be touching their belly with your hand going under. So it's not a surprise when that girt touches them. That's a pretty big thing. Another thing is, people, never tie your horse when they're learning something new, because if they rear back tied, you're going to have a problem just like the trailer loading horse a few weeks ago. Never tie them when you're doing these new things, especially saddling. They should be desensitized enough that they take it, but you never know.
Now, you'll notice that I just moved her around a little bit, and now I've stopped and I'm messing over here with all my rigging again. I don't like just throwing everything on and cinching it down hard, unless you know you need to keep the saddle on. So, you know, the first time I put a saddle on her, I made sure it was tight enough that the saddle wasn't going to fall off if she did anything funky, but loose enough that it didn't really give her a reason to feel the need to get squirrely. So, and I do this even with my older horses. Like, I don't think it's nice to just go throw a saddle on and tighten it down hard. But so I'll move her around a little bit and then go back and check it and see if it needs to be tightened up. You'll also notice on the left side, I've still got that, the billet hanging down. I'm doing that on purpose. It's not long enough that she's going to step on it and hurt herself. It's just one more thing that's touching her that she's going to get used to and desensitized to.
Yeah, this horse is not going to demonstrate it, but in my cowboy world, I got a lot of horses that were not this well-minded. You know, they fit more like some of y'all's minds, you know, a little crazy. But just in my quick training, here was my scenario. The first time I saddled them, they could buck all they want, as much as they want, as hard as they want, as long as they want, but they were going to wear that saddle all day. In fact, Clint Anderson says 24 hours. He wants them to go to sleep with it on, and he wants them to wake up with it on. That's not all bad. But my thing is, the first day, you buck all you want. After that, you never get to buck with a saddle on. If I saddle you and you start bucking, I am going to be on you like white on rice. That is a never. You know, there's a difference between no and never. And I wanted them horses to know when that saddle is on them, you never buck. So it always worked pretty well for me. This horse isn't going to do that, but if you ever get in that case, those are just some ideas.
So while Skipper was talking, I was just working on a little bit of the flexing that we did. And if you were here last week, you heard me talk about I'm looking more right now for her to do it correctly than how far back she'll come. So we're working a little bit now on, she's getting a lot better about doing it correctly.
Explain what you're talking about correctly, because everybody wasn't here last week.
So she has a habit of when I ask her to turn her nose back, she actually wants to tilt her head like this. And that's not really correct flexing, because what it's doing is she turns her nose, but she doesn't really bring her neck around. And that's a twofold thing. When I go to get on her, and I'm going to use the flexing to say, hey, you know, maybe don't buck, don't walk off, that sort of thing. If her neck is not actually turned, she can take her head away from me. So one, it's a safety thing. Two, in growing up, as she gets older, if she doesn't learn to use all these joints properly in her neck, she's opening herself up for some neck problems. So I want her to keep her head vertical to the ground as she comes around like this. And that was one big thing I noticed with her when I first started working with her, is she would have her ears over here while her nose is where it is right now. So we've been working on keep your head correct while we flex. And now that she's getting a little better with it, I'm asking her to keep it flexed a little bit longer and stay correct. So you may have seen her start walking around a little bit with me. That's because she's going, well, you've never asked me to hold it that long. Why do I have to hold it that long? So what I'm doing there is I wait for her to stop, and I wait for her to give me the flexion correctly. Because as she starts arguing a little, she'll go back to what she thinks she's supposed to do, which is the crooked head.
Notice how light she is. That's going to go into when we start riding and we ask for their nose. Be really light.
And so here, you notice she brought her head back and touched my hand, and she's like, well, why didn't you let me go? I said, well, because I want a little bit more, but I don't want it crooked. So there, she straightened it up and stood still, so I let her go.
I think that's one of the biggest problems I see with people watching horse training videos, and they say, release on the try. As soon as they try, you release. That's the first time, people. Or the second or the third time. Once they learn it, they've got to learn to stay there until you release it. And that's where a lot of people skip that training process. They for all the horse's life, they just let it back, let it back. Well, then the horse starts arguing with you if you don't let it back. Are we going swimming today?
Well, it is hot, and it's
And
Florida.
it is that.
Why not? So this is just another thing that I've been using just to kind of get some desensitizing with her. The noodles flop around next to her and smack her in the sides. And guys, they're noodles. They're not going to harm her one bit. And she truly does not care. And notice again, I'm not being gentle about how I do any of this. I'm just kind of getting it done, not tiptoeing around. I throw it over her, let her get used to just lots of movement. As I was tying the string, it was making noise. She's got to get used to noise up on her back. Like I said, she's been doing noodles for a couple weeks, so I don't expect any issues. This is the first time we've done them with the saddle on, but again, she's had the noodles on numerous times.
Once again, if you tie these noodles to your horse and they get scared, they cannot outrun the noodles and bad things can happen. Don't ask me how I know. That's one thing about being old. You got a lot of experience of doing it wrong. While she's playing with that, last week was Father's Day, and this week I wanted to talk about the future of our children and what kind of country are we going to leave our children. But do you understand there's 18.5 million children that don't have a father? And then that means that their mothers are probably working 2 or more jobs. And that means that the schools are teaching our children because they basically don't have a parent at home. And we're going to talk a little bit later about how the schools raising our children is a problem because the schools, a lot of them have gone woke. So we'll talk about that later. See, I like the way it kind of fell over and got lopsided. All of that's good.
And the only thing I'm going to change about that is the string is actually on the ground a little bit so she could step on it, and I just don't want her getting hung up in anything. But I'll leave the noodles lopsided. I'm just going to pull the string up so that it doesn't get tangled around her.
While she's doing that, I want to give you just a little bit of history of what's going on in the United States. There is 6 million children on prescription drugs. Let that sink in. 71% of high school dropouts are from fatherless children. 90% of homeless and runaways are from fatherless children. 21 million children live without their biological father. And 60% of youth suicides are from fatherless children. That is a problem. Our prisons are full of children who did not have a father. And, how does that get fixed? Some generation has got to step up and be a father to these boys. There's all kind of organizations that take these kids fishing and teach them some respect. I think it was the worst thing in the world when they did away with boot camp You go through the military boot camp, you can gain a lot of respect real quick. But I understand now that they can hand the drill sergeant a blue card, and you have to leave them alone for 15 minutes so they can get their thoughts right. Wasn't like that in Vietnam, I can tell you. So how we doing?
We're doing really well. We just took a little pause break. She had a moment where she took a breath and licked and chewed and just kind of went, all right, is this really all we're doing today? I said, no, we still have a little bit to play with.
Yeah, I love these trainers because they're slower than I am, and that's a good thing for the horse in a lot of ways. But I was always one of those that I want to bring their energy up and then teach them to bring it back down. Bring their energy up. Scare them. Bring it back down. And this is a good example. That's got this horse's attention. Watch your ears. Just wanted to show you what can happen.
And what he's saying is absolutely true. There will be a point where I will start doing that with her. Like I said, I'm skipping some stuff to get everything on her, and then I will work on bringing the energy up because you can't just keep life simple all the time. You can't control what's going to happen when, he wants her to be a team roper. Even if she were just going to be a trail horse, what happens when the armadillo runs out from the palmettos? Team roping, there's going to be a lot of adrenaline, a lot of energy. She's going to have to know how to handle that and not just melt down because of it. And she has seen this tarp before. This is not the first time she's seen it. But this is one of the ways, depending on the horse, that I might introduce them to it. She's more uncertain about the possibility that she might step on it here while it's moving than she is scared of it.
Tegan got me. I kept hearing somebody over here in the audience clucking. I'm like, who's doing that? And it was her voice going over the speaker. And clucking just means move. That's what it means. Whatever. If you're standing still, it means move. If you're moving slow, it means move faster. Cluck means go. Now notice the way she has this. If she turns her end loose, the tarp will stop. That is pretty big if you don't have a good-minded horse that has had more of a professional trainer taking them through the steps to get her to this point.
And this way I can let the tarp go, and then it can come maybe chase her a little bit. What's the rope and the steer going to do when she ropes it?
Well, in the worst case scenario, he passes you and the rope goes under your horse's tail. Don't ask me how I know that.
So now it's touching her a little bit. I might ask her for a little more energy, which will make the tarp fly up some. And as Skipper said, this is not something you want to just come do. There are foundational steps that you need to take to get here. She's got a really nice mind, so we can get away with a little bit more with her than we might another horse. And then there, she just took a really big breath. She's licking and chewing. She's calm. She's focused on me. Other points are this hay string is all over her face. So again, another thing she's going to need to get used to is stuff all over her. And don't try this if you're not good with ropes. You will be a tangled mess.
Now, I'm not saying every horse needs this, but it sure don't hurt them. And team roping horses definitely do, because the rope's going to be down their side, around them, under their legs. They're going to be pulling steers or stopping steers.
And some subtle things that she shows me is she makes her circle bigger this direction with the tarp dragging her. So she's telling me she doesn't like it as much on her right side. So while it could still be a lot farther away, it could be closer too. I'll give her an extra lap or two this side before I really start bringing it up to her, just to let her know that, hey, yes, it's following you, but it's really not a big deal.
Have you had it where it's draped over the other side of your saddle, so it's more on the opposite side of you?
Not while moving.
Okay. Because what happens, the horse can see it right there. When you move it behind them, they can hear it, but they can't see it. And it becomes a trust thing, which this horse is very trusting and obedient.
So, and there she's getting a little worried about it, and, you know, she's very subtle, but the ear kind of went back to the tarp looking at it. It touched her on the butt some, and she wanted to turn her butt away from it. But again, her mind is so good, it didn't hurt her, so she kind of just went, oh, okay, whatever. The nice thing about her is most of the time when she gets a little worried, after her reaction, she wants to stop and check it out. And so again, we're having a nice lick and chew here. She's thinking it through. The head's coming down. Now she just wants to go check it out. She's going to tangle herself in the string again.
When you get to one of those spots, I got a story when you want to let her think about it.
Go ahead.
Is that now? Let me find this story. Before I tell the story, we're talking about children. And have you ever heard the story about family business? One family makes it, one uses it, and one loses it. You ever heard that? It's kind of like the country is too. That's where the country's going. But I want to read to you in Deuteronomy 11. It says, "See, I'm setting before you today a blessing and a curse. If you obey the commandments of God, you get a blessing, in which I command you today, and the curse if you do not obey the commandments." In Psalms 22, "Future generations will also serve him. Our children will hear about the wonders of the Lord." My question is, where are they going to hear from? What the schools are teaching them? And so I want to tell you this story, and I want to have a little fun. How many of you have ever watched the Andy Griffin Show? It was popular from 60 to 67, so that kind of tells your age. But in this story, Andy Griffin is a sheriff in a local little small town, and he's got Barney Fife, which is the typical little deputy that wants to arrest everybody. And Andy's got a son named Opie, and his wife had died, so he's raising him by himself with the help of Aunt Bee in this small town. Well, back in those days, they were what they called hobos, which would travel the trains. And I started to make my little stick that had a little pouch on the back, and that's how they traveled. They had a stick with their little pouch on, and they would go down the train track, and they would hop trains from city to city. Well, this hobo named David Brownie winds up in this town. I forgot the name of the town now. Mulberry, that's it. And David somehow finds Opie. And he's telling Opie about all the different things he's seen going from city to city on the train, from the mountains to the oceans to beautiful corn crops, and Opie's just soaking it in. And Brownie wants Opie to get on the train with him. Young boy. So now here's the story and how it reads. David Brownie says, well, Sheriff, maybe I look at things a little differently than most people. Is that wrong? I live by my wits. I'm not above bending the law now and then to keep clothes on my back or food in my stomach. I live the kind of life that other people would just love to live if they had the courage. Who's to say that boy would be happier with my way or yours? Why not we let him decide? And Andy says, no, I'm afraid it don't work that way. You don't let a young'un decide for himself. He'll grab the first flashy thing with shiny ribbons on it, and when he finds out there's a hook in it, it's too late. The wrong ideas have become packaged with so much glitter, it's hard to convince him of other things might be better in the long run. And all a parent can do is say, wait, trust me, and try to keep the temptation away. And David says, you know, I've grown awful fond of that young fella. What's wrong? And Andy says, well, there seems to be something wrong with his thinking. He's gotten a little twisted on things lately, like being able to tell the difference between right and wrong. David nods his head, and Andy follows up and says, that's not an easy thing. A lot of grown-ups are still struggling with the same problem. It's especially difficult for a youngster because things rub off on them real easy. In the United States, 7% of the adults claim to be LGBTQ+. But in the schools, they claim it's 20%. Now, why is that? Because the schools are teaching it and promoting it. That's why it jumps from 7% to 20%. And it's been happening for a long time. And I'm going to leave that right there. You can go ahead. I got another one to finish with.
So some of the more boring work we've been doing is, like I said, learning to move away from physical touch and physical pressure. So one of the things we started working on this week was asking her where your leg might be to move the hips over. So when I go to do this, I'm just going to kind of rub it. Your leg's not going to be stabbing her every step of the way, so she needs to be okay with the rubbing too. And then I'm just going to take my finger, the tip of my finger, and just very gently kind of touch her skin, which, as you can see, she's not even paying attention. That's okay. I'm not going to just jam my finger in her side, because eventually I'd like her to know that touching the skin like this means something. Since she's ignoring it, I'm going to put a little bit more pressure in, and my mind is thinking I want to touch her muscle. And she moved. That's all that there is to it. If she hadn't moved with me thinking I'm touching her muscle, I'm going to go through the muscle and think about touching her bone. If that doesn't work, get a different horse. If that doesn't work, I have watched Skipper actually take his hand off and pop them, which will get most horses' attention.
I got to demonstrate this. Come here.
I'm a little nervous.
This is the cowboy way. I can ask, I can tell, and I can command. But you always want to start off with the least little bit.
Absolutely.
You ask them with the least. Just the cowboy in me wants it now. Good job.
So we're working on that with both sides, because, most riders have two legs, so they need to know how to do this on both sides of their body. So again, I'm just going to kind of touch her skin. She has no clue. I'm going to go to the muscle. I can see her thinking about it. I feel her shifting, but that's not the shift I want, so I'm not going to take pressure off. Now she's kind of, there she goes, right there. That's all I want, right there. That's the starting point. We can get more steps later. I want her calmly responsive to just that pressure and a single step. I can ask her for more steps later.
Cowboy world again. When you ask a horse to move its hips over, you only want one step. You can always ask for another one, ask for another one, ask for another. In fact, most of the times you'll never see the trainer asking, but the horse feels it. And let me tell you why. When you pull up to this barbed wire gate and you ask your horse to move over, you just want a little at the time so you can do the gate. Or even if it's a wooden gate, if they move too much, they mash your leg. If it's barbed wire, you're in trouble. But that's why you train one step at a time so they get the idea that that pressure don't mean a full circle. If it's a full circle, you get several of those. The other thing that's going to be good in your training, knowing this is a team roping horse, because that's what I did. When okay, you're gonna be my steer, and I'm gonna have my back to the camera. When I'm coming to rope this steer and my horse gets too wide, I want to be able to do this leg and him move over this whole body to get me in line with the steer. Now, when I rope that steer and I'm pulling him in the heeler ropes, then I want him to run his butt around and keep the rope tight. So those controlling the body parts is huge for a team roping horse. You know, but I will tell you that on the team roping side, man, they're real big on moving with their left leg, almost like a side pass, but you're doing it at a run. Just move them over. Because what happens if you try to pull their head over, their head blocks the steer and you can't see what you're roping. And it also shifts their body away from where you really wanted to go. So it's that leg pressure is so important. And facing up, running that hip around is so important, getting a fast clock. So these are all things this horse is going to use the rest of his life.
Yeah, this is not just doing it just to do it. And really every horse should know how to do all of these things, even if you're a trail rider. You know, what happens if you get caught up in something and you need to move your horse out of it, but you need to move sideways? Or, as Skipper said, you're going to open a gate. Maybe you have a big horse like mine and you don't feel like getting off to open the gate. It'd be nice that your horse can do that. And then pretty much any competitive discipline, you're going to want all those buttons. So that's just one of the simple things we're working on. Again, got the saddle on, so she's getting used to the saddle and then going back and putting in the little details. Another thing that we worked on this past week was just me jumping up and down next to her. You ever gone to get on a horse and when you start to bounce, they freak out and go sideways away from you? She's got to be okay with that. Not to mention, she's going to have stuff flying all around her once she starts roping, so she needs to be okay with it. So you start a little small just to assess where the horse is. There's some horses that cannot handle what I just did. You can't go bigger than that. Obviously, she really doesn't care. So with her, I started off small, and I got pretty big pretty quick. Now, also note, I've got my hand on the saddle horn. It's a little bit twofold. It helps me get a little more height. It puts a little pressure on her, but also if she does start to move away, I can keep up with her a little bit better. Also notice, you can't see, not everybody can see, I've got my hand on this lead rope, so if she does start to move away, I can keep her head towards me so I don't all of a sudden have a back foot next to me. Because some horses, when they get scared, their reaction is spin and kick. Last thing you want to have happen. And that's where the flexing and the being soft in the face comes in, is when she hits the end of this rope, she'll come back to me. And this is just one of those moments you just give them that time that they need to process and figure out what they just dealt with.
Speed and noise is always going to increase excitement. And that's one of the things that people do wrong. They keep it low key all the time, so they never understand that increased speed is going to build the horse's excitement.
And again, you do something on one side, you're going to do it on the other.
There's when she don't jump high, there's no response. The higher she jumps. Can you jump higher, Tegan?
You got a trampoline? Because you did notice her head came up a little.
What she's saying is Tegan's really boring.
And in my world, that's okay. I'd rather her be sitting here going, wow, are we doing this again? Than panicked over what she thinks I'm going to do next. So something else, and this is something I have not done with her yet, is at some point, these fenders are going to be flapping. She needs to be okay with this.
Oh, there's something new.
And so this is one of those times where, again, it's a good thing that she's soft in the face, because she could get away from you very easily if she weren't. And I just have to keep doing this until she figures out that it's not hurting her.
That's when Tegan says, I wish I'd have started off a little softer. That's when we say, I'm glad I'm not doing that with my shoulder. All she's looking for is to stop and relax just a tad.
Yeah, if she stops for just a moment, there.
And one of the things people don't do is they don't let them stop and think about it now. Okay, how did I make that go away? How did I make that go away? Oh, I stopped. It gives them time to process what just happened so that they learn it rather than just they reacted from it.
And so I will give her this time to really think it out, let her head come down. She's very big on coming over to her human and saying, is this okay? Are we good now? And I'm okay with that. Not every horse I will allow that with, depending on their personality. But with her, I will. She's still young. She's curious. I want her to have that trust. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to bring her back to the middle of the round pen where she's not trapped between me and the fence. I'm going to do it again. And be a little more prepared this time with a slightly shorter rope. Get the noodle out of my way. And now,
That's, people, that's horse training. When you stop at the right time. If she would have stopped while that horse was moving, what did she teach the horse? Just keep moving. But that's evidence right there.
and I mean, she's also got an amazing brain. So yes, stopping at the right time is absolute key. She makes it a little easier because she's got such a good brain. You'll notice her head still came up right there. She still went, what is going on? But she remembered when I quit moving, it went away. So yeah, I'd like to see her keep her head down when I do it. But right now I need to reward what she just learned. And she doesn't move. I'm not going to do it until she starts moving again. As she gets more comfortable with this, I'll do it longer and expect her to stand still with it.
Good job.
And
I don't
again,
know.
sorry.
I don't know how many young horses I've seen people, they saddle them the first time and they don't get it tight enough. And when they jump and start bucking, it rolls underneath them. Then they have a tore up saddle.
Yeah, that would not be good.
But it happens.
And I would also say, don't try to make it where, she's going to pop her head up today. Don't try to make it where she keeps her head down today. This is a new thing. Let her have a day or two to process what happened and come back in a day or two whenever you're going to work with them next. They're likely to remember it a little bit better. If you try to just fix it all today, some horses you can get away with that. Some horses you may make a bit of a mess. So we did it on one side. We have to do the other side.
See how it's different when you change sides? Yeah, I'm really glad that's you today.
And the tarp actually helped us out a little because she didn't want to go past the tarp, so it made her stop sooner. Nice thing again with her having such a nice brain, I opened a door here where she could have spurted out just in case she couldn't handle the pressure. And she went, I've already stopped, maybe I should just stop. Another horse would have taken that opening and spurted out. So again, just stop and let her think about it, and I'll give it a minute, and I'll pull her back to the middle and do it again.
Here's why I believe horse training is the closest thing to God training us there is. Because we teach relationships. This is a relationship building thing. What this trainer is doing is reminding this horse of what we've done and teaching it something new. The Bible says the job of the Holy Spirit is to remind you and teach you. Wow, are we learning as fast as the horse is learning? Because that's the Holy Spirit's job, is to teach us and remind us new things. And that is a perfect illustration of trainers. Now, we tease about if you handle a horse you're training. Well, actually, if you make one definition of a trainer's teaching a horse something they've never done before. That's training something new. A lot of people, you're kind of teaching because if you allow something, you're teaching that something. But I like the idea of a trainer teaches new things, a rider maintains those things. But that's a perfect illustration of reminding them what they know and then teaching them something new. That's horse training 101. I love it.
And every day as I go through the reminders will get shorter and shorter because at some point, you shouldn't have to do any of this. You should be able to tack her up and get on. So if every single time I work her, everything stays the same length of time, eventually your 1 hour ride is going to turn into 3 hours because of all the groundwork you have to do before you get on. So as she learns different things, I'll make those reminders shorter and shorter until I can just walk out and see where she is and go, all right, just get on.
I love the illustration that Chris Cox says. We have to do maintenance. You know, like your car needs maintenance, your animals need maintenance, your children need maintenance. It's that little thing. My horses, they got what you're talking about. Every time I put a halter on them, I asked them to lower their head and come to me. If they didn't do that politely, then I had an issue to work on, which might only take another 15 seconds. But that's what you want to get to. All that other stuff comes down to, are you obedient today? That's all I'm asking. Are you obedient today? And when you do that every time, they'll say yes. It's like us becoming obedient to God. If you practice being obedient every day, it gets easier. So try it. All right, wind us up, and we're going to start with a final message here.
All right, so we're just going to double check that she remembered stop, stand still means this goes away. And that was really good. She thought that one through. She wanted to leave, and then she went, wait, that didn't work last time. And if we have time, we'll do it one more time.
Okay.
If we don't, then...
Yeah, go ahead. Now, what she can do in that is each time it gets bigger or louder. You keep... I call it up the ante. I won't tell you why I know what that means, but you keep building it, and that's how you go.
And if I have a horse that maybe I have come on too strong, I'm not going to stop flapping it, but maybe I'll make it a little less to help them understand that it's really not going to kill them. And if they start to slow down, I can kind of play a game of hot and cold of when you slow down, this gets less, and when you speed up, maybe it gets a little bit more, and kind of show them the right answer because maybe I made the mistake of getting too hard too quickly.
One of the things that's really big on this is a illustration. If you had a hot-breaded an Arabian, boy, that could take a while to get them to stop. If you got a couch potato or a good-minded horse, they pick it up pretty fast.
Yeah.
But knowing your horse breed and temperament is a lot. That's what makes trainers better. They know how much pressure to add and when to add it. So, good stuff.
Yeah. If she were a hot horse, I might have started with something like this. You guys can't even see me doing it. I'm moving the stirrup about that much. If she were super hot, I might have started that little.
One more time. Let's see how big she'll go. I want to see her move. I want to see her not like it. Good job. So many times you hear me talk about horse training is like building a house. And so many times people want to put the roof on before they got the foundation on. And you cannot do that with horse training or with relationships with people or God. You know, you got to have a foundation, and then it's one block at the time. And when you do it that way, it's amazing the process you can make when you just add a little at the time of what they can accept. I want to go back real quickly about the future of our children. And we just talked about that 7% of adults are LGBTQ, but 20% of students. It's actually 7.2, they say. They've got it narrowed down. I don't know if I can get through this or not. Last Tuesday, they had a school board meeting in Hillsborough County. And I don't know at what point they knew that it was going to come up for the board to decide whether they were going to declare June Pride Month for all the schools. Now, they said that was going to happen last month, and I don't know what happened, but they didn't put it on the agenda. Well, duh, June's almost over, and they decided to put it on the agenda. And at this school board meeting, about 100 people showed up. And it was about, if I'm correct, Debbie Hunt, it was about half and half for it, half against it. But here's what I want to say. Do you know how many people's in Hillsborough County? Let me help you. Over 18 years old. There's 1,180,374 adults in Hillsborough County, and 50 people showed up saying, we don't want this in our schools. Now, I'm going to say, it's part of my thing. We, and when I say we, I'm going to say me, have got to do a better job of telling the people this is going to happen. It's time to show up. If you knew that was happening, how many of you would have been there? You see what they do, though, they do it at 4 o'clock in the afternoon when the working people have a job. And we need to see about getting that changed. But when 50 people represent 1 million people, something is wrong. If we don't stand for our children, who's going to? There's no doubt in my mind that the people on that panel, it didn't matter who said what. I think only 20 people get to speak for 2 minutes. I was planning on going. I won't say why I didn't go, but we had a little small medical emergency and I couldn't go. But you only get 2 minutes to talk. And it's believed that these elected officials, it don't matter what you say, they're not going to change how they're going to vote. It's amazing in the United States anymore how many elected officials are bought and paid for. And they're going to vote the way they're told to vote for. And you know what would change that? What would happen if 10,000 people showed up? And you shut the whole thing down? What would happen if every one of those people got 10,000 emails and shut their email account down? There's my 2 donuts. I'm fixing to get started. We have got to start standing up. I just got floored this week because part of my job with CDF is going to be to encourage other churches and other preachers to stand. There's no doubt we can see the evil that's happening in the world. You know, everybody says, Satan don't even hide anymore. My question to preachers is, what do you do with Ephesians 6, where it says that our battle is against the evil one, and it says stand 3 times. We are called to stand against evil. Now, I brought that to somebody's attention this week, and they said their preacher talked about the same thing that's last Sunday. And that stand meant do nothing. And I told him, change churches. Because if we don't stand, what is the next generation and the next generation and the next generation going to have when 20% LBG turns into 60% LBG because they've been indoctrinated that you can be? Do you know they've got fur clubs? People, they got fur clubs in school. You can identify as a dog or a cat. In fact, I heard one time that the students were demanding a litter box in the bathroom. They've gone crazy. Satan has no limits. And if the people of God don't stand up, what kind of world are we going to pass on to Abe and Lenny's children, my grandchildren's children and their children? What kind of world are we going to pass to that? Now, I intentionally waited to the last because I'm just going to give you enough to excite you a little bit so you'll come back next week. In 1971, there was a court case from Lemon and Kershaw. And basically what it was, they twisted the First Amendment of the Constitution, saying that anything you did religious in a public area was not right. It was, you couldn't, that would be making that the government's religion. See what happened? Bad judges made a decision. These are the same group of judges that did Roe versus Wade in 73. But in 71, it was about government. Do you remember when you could no longer put a nativity scene at the courthouse? It's because of this case. Do you remember when they took the 10 Commandments out of the schools and out of the courthouses? It was because of this case. They called it the Lemon Test. And I found out in the last 51 years, there's been 7,000 cases, over 7,000, that the judges claimed, well, the Lemon Test says you can't do that. It's already been gone through the court. I found out that a year ago this month, the Lemon case was overturned and we don't know about it. See, that's what happens. The fifth generation warfare is the TV is the battlefield. We're not told on TV or news that the Lemon case is no more. And one of the cases, I'm not going to tell you. You got to come back next week. I'm going to tell you what happened to Joseph Kennedy. Remember Joseph Kennedy? No. Because it didn't matter to us that he's the one that got fired for praying after a football game. Do you remember when they prayed over the intercom before the football game? We can do that again because the Lemon Law is no more. It has been overthrown. There is so many freedoms. Never in 51 years has the religious community had more freedoms than they have right now. But we've had it for a year and didn't know it. Next week's the 4th of July, and it's going to be about the Constitution, and I'm going to talk about how they turned this Constitution around and how it's now turned back around. And now we have the freedom of speech and religion. And that freedom means we can take it to the courthouse, we can take it to the schools, we can take it to your workplace. If they allow any other form of identity, then they have to allow you your form of identity. And I am excited. I'm excited to learn more about it. I'm excited to share more about it. And next week, we're going to break it down, what the Constitution actually says and how this applies to do away with the Lemon Law. In part of it, that case was won because of Joseph Kennedy when they took him and they fought in front of the Supreme Court to win this case. Why? Because the judges have changed. And the judges are appointed by the presidents. And if we don't change everything next year in the election, you either get good judges or you get bad judges. The world is going to change in the election in 24. And I'm going to educate you on how to make it a godly change. We thank you for coming. Enjoy the 4th of July. Be safe if you're out of town. God bless you. We're going to pray and dismiss. Father God, I thank you that not one thing that has happened in America caught you by surprise. No more than all the times people turned away from you in the Old Testament. We turned away from you and we quit fighting for you because we were convinced that we were just supposed to love and not judge. I'm reminded that when Satan come against you, you kicked him out. And you expect the same thing from us. When he comes against you, for us to kick him out too. I believe that you're waiting for your people to stand for you. And Lord, I thank you for that. I look forward to the things you're going to do because you have called us for such a time as this to stand for you, to love you. Oh, Lord, we thank you for the Constitution and all that goes with it. Lord, I thank you. In Jesus' name, amen. No class next Monday. There will be no men's class the following week during the 4th of July. God bless. Have fun.